What's your tech stack? What's your process? How many team members do you have? Total number of managements? Where do you want to get to? How do you feel when your property manager is calling you? The question is, you as a property management business, is how are you making your landlords feel? The best property management businesses that I see have got a vision. Creating a DNA in your business of growth is an exciting place to be. It creates excitement. It creates an environment for people to thrive. If you understand individually what your people want and map out what a path looks like for them to get there, you'll attract good people, you'll keep good people, and you'll grow a successful business. The first person that I would employ would be...
You're listening to the Property Management Excellence Podcast for insights that drive rapid rental growth.
Welcome back. Great to have you with us. PMX Podcast. I'm Alex Whitlock, co-founder and managing director of REB. I constantly think about how to start the right way in business, whether it's my own business in and around media and events, whether it's managed, the tech platform that we've built, or the audience that we cater for, which is real estate and property management. And I think ever increasingly about what the DNA is of a fast-starting agency and really what the proposition is to their customer, because a business built around your customers is going to have a very strong advantage in the marketplace if you can convey and reinforce that. I try and focus bringing on to the podcast guests that have experience in property management, have insights into how to grow and scale businesses. And I'm really pleased to welcome back somebody who I caught up with a while ago on the PMX podcast. I've seen him since up at ARIC. He invited me to be part of his property management program up at ARIC. But Nick Georges, who is very, very well established in property management and is senior representative at Wingman. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks for having me on again.
We spent some time chatting up at ARIC about the things we're going to chat through today. And I think conversations like the ones that we have offline, I think are valuable to capture. I am not a real estate agent. I think I kind of would have liked to have been, maybe going back, several decades, but it's not the way that life has taken me. But I look at real estate and see a lot of opportunity. I think that there are a lot of businesses that are good, but there's a lot of, it's quite hard to differentiate, between different businesses. Everyone has a great, happy, smiling team. They've got great customer service. They do all of the things that you would expect them to do. They've been around since, 2006. But I think having an X factor in property management, you look at the businesses that do have that and you see how fast they grow. I think drilling into what exactly that is and harnessing it is a real valuable thing to articulate.
Absolutely, yeah. The old notion of we've got things that we need to do in property management, and that doesn't change whether you're an office of 200 managements or an office of 2,000 managements. There's arrears, there's rent increases, there's facilitating maintenance, there's the things that come with day-to-day management of investment properties. And you and I speak about it a lot, is what is your X factor to the marketplace? And what I'm seeing out there across the multiple businesses that we work with are the ones that are identifying what their X factor is and showcasing it to the marketplace, especially in a difficult market, are the ones that come out of it in a very, very good position.
I'll give you it's just something just popped into my mind. It's a really bad analogy, but it's something that's close to me. So I'm a fisherman. I love fishing. It's like my life outside of work. So I've been at fishing tackle shops for decades, and everyone will have their own particular area that they go to. Bear with me on this. So I've been at fishing shops for decades, and you kind of go along and you pick your stuff and you stand there and you look around, and you might have to go and get someone to help. But there's a fishing shop in Mona Vale called the Fishing Station, and it is a completely different experience. You walk in, it is bright, all the stock is in good order, it's extremely expensive, it's very well laid out, and they have got a team of consultants that are engaging, proactive, and they're also fishermen. And I end up, I don't ever have a receipt from there because I have to keep it very much hidden. I'm embarrassed for myself how much money I spend. But the experience that you get when you go to that particular shop is what they understand is not the people who are there buying fishing tackle, right? That's what they're doing. They're there because they are very, very passionate fishermen, and they are very much engaged in going fishing. They have consultants that can talk to you about fishing, catching fish, and you very quickly realize that they know what they're talking about. Now, the reason I bring this analogy is you look at property management, you've got custodians of real estate assets in areas with very granular data, with PMs that understand how to maintain and look after property, but they very rarely articulate to their customer. They're usually a bearer of bad news. They have unsophisticated conversations with customers when there is the capacity to have very sophisticated conversations. And I think the agencies that are understanding and delivering on that, you can see them growing.
I think the question is, you as a property management business, is how are you making your landlords feel? Which is what you're sort of alluding to when you walk into that fishing shop. How do you feel when your property manager is calling you? Or how do you feel when you are receiving an email from the property manager? Well, is there a negative connotation?
But we all know how we feel.
Yeah.
We all know how we feel because it's never good news.
Yeah.
And that's no slight on the PM, right? It is going to be that there is a maintenance request, that there is, I got a note from from one of my PMs yesterday. It was an email actually, prompting me because of compliance updates down in Victoria, $168 here and then another $70 there, and with red typing. If I don't use their option, then I have to get my own, and it's just not a great experience. Now, I don't blame the PM for that; they're doing their job, but this is as an owner, you get this it's kind of one-way traffic of bad news. So, but not every owner is an investor, Nick, but a lot of them are, and I think to have there's not many people. I've learned on your journey, you've got your buyer's agents who they're all full of, sugar and excitement when they're looking to sell you something, and you have really exciting conversations. Then of course they sell you a property and they're gone. But your PM's there, the PMs actually lean into that and have constructive conversations with their owners on an ongoing basis about their asset, the suburb that it's in, what's happening in the local market, just information.
So the question is, Alex, how do we shift that? How do we shift the mindset around the property manager providing value to the landlord?
Yeah.
And shifting that mindset around that negative connotation. And I think there's, in my opinion and what I've observed over
and your experience,
23 years in the industry, I think there's multiple layers to how we provide an end result where the landlord feels like they are valued and the landlord feels like they are getting value from the organisation that they've entrusted to manage their investment property. And some of those layers, I think, come back to leadership.
Totally.
So leadership is one. Process, people, performance. I always look at the 3 Ps, right? So when I'll go through those, process is what tech stack do you use? What is the process behind that tech stack? What are the touch points with the landlord? So the way that the operational piece of property management goes. People is, do you have the right people in the right seats?
Yeah.
And have you mapped out what their career and their journey looks like in your office, whether it be starting in leasing, starting in reception, moving through the ranks in property management, potentially becoming a team leader? Do they know what their journey is?
This is really important. I think you've hit on something really significant. And I'm going to pick up, first of all, Nick, one of the key things, which is leadership. You can't expect, some property managers by default, the way they're wired as human beings are very proactive. It's the way they're wired. And you get some PMs, even with poor leadership, that deliver exceptional experiences to their owners. And I'm not saying that, a lot of PMs just do their job well, right? But owners, there's a bit of a disconnect. Some, though, have the confidence to really deliver that exceptional experience. But if the leadership in the agency within which you operate is not customer focused and not looking at value for the customer, it's very hard to expect employees to do something that they're not led to do. So I think leadership is really critical. And then you can kind of take a step back from there as well, because I think a lot of legacy agencies have come where property management is a bit of an also-ran. So there isn't really, they kind of like the money that comes in, the annuity through the management fees and other income generated, but they don't really care about it as a central proposition in their business. And I think from a leadership perspective, if you value the business opportunities through building a very strong rent roll, if you value the customer relationships, and I think a lot of sales agents, I don't know what the percentages are, but it's usually sales agents set up offices and then they'll build a PM operation.
As an afterthought.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think a lot of sales agents conceptually understand the importance of a rent roll, but they don't bother learning about it. And I'll tell you, Nick, that I'll just give you a very honest analogy. So we launched Managed. When you were back in the days of LJ, were a customer of ours. Funnily enough, we're here again now. I myself and my business partner Phil, we backed Managed with the founders that came along. We went, well, that's a great idea. And for 7 years or 6 years of that business, I left it at arm's length and I let it run its own course. And I realized about 12 months ago that for this business that is a very considerable consideration, that does things very differently to other PM platforms because it's built on payments technology, automated instant payments, and a genuine replacement of the trust account. I'm not going to go into the kind of the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of how it does it, but with a business that is that complex and that different to every other business, I realized 12 months ago that I needed to give up and relinquish the responsibilities I have in a major media business and be full-time working in Managed. So going back into looking at real estate, when you've got very successful sales agents and we've got some incredible sales agents, they know the value of building a rent roll, but the temptation to let other people do it for you, it seems to make sense. You go, well, I don't know PM, so I'll get somebody who does know PM. But here's the thing, if they have a legacy mindset, you're going to build a legacy business. So I think for anyone who is looking to start a business, from whatever your background is, you've got to go into it looking at not how things have been done in the past, but how things are being done now and into the future.
I think it comes back to a capacity thing, though. A lot of the selling principles that we talk about, the sales agents that go out on their own and open a business and then off the back of inbound leads or sales transactions, that the property management part of the business just eventuates.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the reason why it doesn't get foundationally set up correctly is because of it's a capacity thing. So as a selling principal, you come in, the only thing that you want to worry about is listing and selling real estate. And if there's leads that come in property management, then you just flick them to the property manager and you just put them in an incubator until such time as you get to 100 or 200 or whatever the number is, where you think, oh, this is actually a decent sized asset now. I need to foundationally get it sorted. But just slowing down and actually doing that foundational piece around, this is an asset that if I can get it to 2, 3, 4, 500, whatever the number is going to be the value of my business, is the backbone of my business, and will be a foundational piece to get us through uncertain times, because it can't always be good.
We're going to take a quick break there, Nick. When we come back, I'd like to start to dig down into what the fundamentals are of setting up from scratch, or maybe kind of a restructuring of an existing business, what the fundamentals look like for success. Don't go anywhere.
Well, g'day everyone, it's Liam here. Now, if you're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed with your compliance to-do list and a little bit irritated with everything that's coming through the pipeline to make sure that you are compliant, well, I have a solution for you. It's Visible, VIS, IBL, an end-to-end compliance platform that's been built specifically for Aussie real estate. Visible makes it simple to get your agency compliant. So whether it's minimizing the paperwork headache or handling AUSTRAC enrollment, risk assessment and policy, customer verifications, team training, and more. It's a platform built for the industry and built to actually make compliance simple. Check out Visible at visibl.com.au.
Welcome back. Great to have you with us. Nick Georges with me on PMX Podcast, Alex Whitlock. Talking about now, look, we're going to get into some of the fundamentals of setting up or maybe restructuring a rent roll. I know that there are a lot of agencies that get that sort of 30, 40, 50, 60 and sort of find that they're kind of stifled and don't grow. Maybe some of them are at sort of 5 or 6 PUM and don't really get going. Some, we'll get there by default. Others have a very strategic plan. We talked in the first part really about, sort of what the origins are of most agencies. Start often with a successful sales agent. And let's just look at that for a second, Nick. What I find really fascinating is when you work in sales, it's very open. You know who you're competing with. You know when you're the best sales agent in your particular area, in your territory, or one of the best. And it's really competitive. And you get sales agents that come in, they don't make the cut, and then they disappear. And you get those that endure, and you can see them move usually from agency to agency. And then they'll go and either start with a franchise or maybe start with their own brand. They've kind of got there by winning, right? So they're good at what they do, but then they go in, they open up the PM side of the business, and they don't have the same competitive things that have got them to where they are as a sales agent. They're so focused on going, right, I'm going to run my own team. I know the agents I'm going to bring in. We're going to get going. So looking at, and from your experience, Nick, and I know you work with many, many agent startups and established businesses through Wingman. Let's just look down now at, for sales agents particularly, what are the fundamentals to setting up from scratch a rent roll infrastructure that's going to be successful?
It's a really good question, and I always bring it back to like what made them a successful agent. Like you talk about an agent who's winning, who's writing good GCI or has built a successful career, and every sales agent that I know that's had success has had a vision of what they want to get to. So like they've put a goal in front of them, whether it be a number of transactions, whether it be GCI, whatever it is, they had a vision.
Target driven.
And the best property management businesses that I see have got a vision. They want to, and it could be a selling principal who's just opened their own office and wants to get to 100 managements by the end of the year. Or it could be a PM only business who wants to get to 10,000 in 10 years, whatever that vision is. I think that's where it starts. And then you can get granular. Like I always think about vision, who's going to drive it? So people, because as a principal, a selling principal, you're listing and selling. So you probably don't have the skill set or desire or capacity to manage property. So invest in a really good foundational team member in property management that you can build a department around.
Yeah.
I would argue that first hire in property management,
critical.
It's so critical, and I would be looking at someone who could work in a hybrid manner. As an example, like someone who is going to be growth focused, because that is the hardest part of starting a rent roll is getting that momentum and getting those managements on board. So finding people, so vision, people, and then the third part is actually getting granular as to the platforms and the process in that. And I think they can all be done in a very confined space of time. And quite often a salesperson will find the property management person that they want to start their department, and maybe together they can come up with their vision, and together they can work out what platform, and together they can work out the process and what do they want to achieve as a business, and how do they want to convey that property management department and that business to the marketplace. Because quite often it's an afterthought, property management, just chucking managements into a pool.
Yeah.
There's no thought or process behind it. And all of a sudden you're 12 months down the track and you've got 35, 40 managements and it's not really making money, and the salesperson's like, this is coming out of my account every month. So it starts to snowball into negative connotation after negative connotation, and then it gets to 100, and the property manager that you've got in there doesn't want to do inspections anymore and doesn't want to work Saturdays, and so it's a very difficult thing to come back from if you don't have that clear vision of where you want to get to.
I think that's very interesting points there, Nick. And I think one thing that I sort of observe or believe is that sales agents will look at property management and go, well, I don't know about that, so I'm not going to get involved. But the irony is that the opportunity is they already have the skill set to do it, because good sales agents are incredibly good with their customers. You know, I've sold quite a few properties over the years. Sales agents just they'll take the vendor by the scruff of the neck. And I've worked with some fantastic sales agents, James Baker, over in the Northern Beaches. He sold a property for me a few years ago, just owns and drives the process. William Chan from Chan Yarl owns and drives the process, because it's a really interesting experience from a customer to think about working with them and many other sales agents, good sales agents. They tell you how they are in charge. They give you confidence. They're honest and realistic. They manage your expectations, and they educate and take you through the process, right? Where's all that in property management? That is an important skill. And with all of the sales agents I've worked with, I've given them good reviews. I've been very happy with their outcome, because it's not about the sale price at the end of the day, because they will educate me about, and it's not just about getting your house and stick it on the market and selling it. You need to stage it. There's going to be certain money you're going to have to spend to get it ready for sale. You're going to have to do things you don't want to do, like painting it and landscaping and a whole bunch of stuff. And it's stressful. And you don't know what the market's going to throw up, and you don't know how many people are going to be serious buyers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've always, with great sales agents, I've always been happy and remained happy. So sales agents that go into building an agency, you've got that skill set. If you apply that customer focus to the property management side of your business, you're going to very quickly build raging advocates for what you do on the PM side. And guess what? They feed back into the sales side of the business if you do it right.
Sales agents are the best friend of the property management department.
Absolutely.
I often are speaking with businesses who are gearing up for growth. I want to double down on growth. And I get messaging like, oh, we don't want to rely on our sales team. And it's like, why wouldn't you rely on your sales team? They're the lowest hanging fruit in your business. Your job as a PM department is to bridge that gap and treat the sales side of the business as the client, because the best businesses that I've seen have done that, and the gap between sales and property management is non-existent. The leads coming back and forth, and the trust that the sales agents have with the property managers, it's the one activity that if you've got a sales team and you're building a property management business, it's the one activity bridging that gap between sales and PM. As soon as your sales team have trust in your property management, you will see exponential growth in your rent roll. And then the other part to what you were saying too is, I think training is a huge part of property management that doesn't get talked about enough. Continued upskilling of the property management side of the business. We talk about ARIC and we talk about all these sales conferences that are out there, but property management training is a real thing. Upskilling your PMs on like what's happening in the investment trends, like what's happening in their local market. Like property management is so widespread at times where they could be managing property in the east.
They get so busy doing the doing, because the job gets on top of them, and again, it's a leadership thing, and you can end up, sort of caught in the crashing surf where you can't ever catch your breath. And then suddenly doing training and upskilling, well, I'm so busy doing what I'm doing, you know. I'm just going to come back in, and there's just another thought that has struck me, and this sort of transcends really any kind of area of business. You can get this fear of something operational that you don't know and understand, and you have a bit of a glance over. So, sales agent, with the operation, there's a lot to do in property management. It's maybe a lot more complex than the sales process because you have an ongoing asset base and customer base, 2 different customers, right? Your tenants, 3 if you look at all the trades that are involved. And I think it's really tempting to kind of go, I don't know and understand that, so I'm not going to get involved. And I'll give you again another analogy, looking at managed, so I've got a number of businesses of which I've set up, grown from scratch. I looked at managed and we had some changes in personnel. I went, I don't understand product, so I'm going to leave it. And I realized that it reached a stage with me where I realized I can't ignore something that I care about a great deal that is having an impact on the property management space. And I have learned, I know the product inside out now, and I didn't think I could. I felt it was beyond me. But once you know and understand as a selling agent, property management isn't that complicated. If you actually care about building a business and having a team that values your leadership, to go and learn and understand. I went in at the ground level with managed, not as a fancy boss, but my title is co-founder. I don't actually have a title though, because I have learned from the team every little corner of the product, and now I can help them, not from a tech perspective, but start to shape product, because I've learned about how the product works. From a PM perspective, as a selling agent, it's so rewarding for your team when you don't have to be. I say you don't have to be doing, open homes. I know I had on the podcast a guy called Ashby Farrell, who's over in WA, who was a selling agent who was unhappy about using the PM team in the agency that he used to work. So he set his own agency up. He goes out and he's out there doing open homes, right? He actually does do that. So I think there's something so invigorating in a business when the boss knows what you're doing. If you're a selling agent, you understand PM, you're going to attract good people to that business because they know you care. When you don't show any interest or any love for that business, when someone else does it, you're never going to really fulfill all your sort of potential to grow that business to the best it can possibly be.
Well, they're looking at you like someone who's been in their shoes before and has been through the trenches and understands what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So the mindset around that is very, very different as opposed to a selling principal who's just opened a PM department and you're just doing all the stuff. But to bring it back to your conversation around like starting that PM business, I think all of the stuff and all of the tasks that are associated with property management that do bog the PMs
so let's be specific.
Yeah.
So let's look at what are the most grinding tasks that bog PMs down, the most unpalatable things.
Generally it's maintenance.
Yeah.
Maintenance is the big one where it's
uncomfortable. You're dealing with discomfort.
Yeah, well, the owner's uncomfortable because they know it's going to cost them money.
Tenant's frustrated.
Yeah, the tenant's frustrated because something doesn't work in the property. The property manager has to do a bunch of the admin side around getting quotes, chasing up tradespeople not getting back to them because they're on site. There is a lot of back and forth.
And some of them can have some fairly serious compliance issues if it's electrical, there's a lot at stake.
There's a lot at stake. So, but all of that, I call it noise, all of the noise can be taken away with good support and good process. So when I talk about support is like, what's your tech stack and do you have an offshore team? Do you have admin support? Like what is that support structure like around the property manager? And the second part is what is your property with that support and with that good tech, what is your property manager actually doing? Because a lot of that noise has been taken away with automation and support. And I always use this analogy, like we're affiliated with a property management business up in Brisbane.
I had your CEO
Johnny?
on. No, I had Nat.
Oh, Nat, yeah.
She did a podcast.
Amazing operator. I would say she's one of the top PM professionals in the country.
Yeah.
And we always talk about everyone always talks about KPIs, but what are you actually measuring for a property manager? And in that business, they're looking after between 250 and 300 properties each. The only KPI is to speak to the landlord once a month.
This is it, and I really like Nat's, sort of something she lives by is we're phone first.
Phone first.
And it's I've sort of talked about this a few times. This is not any kind of directive that PMs should pick the phone up, because again, I'm talking about leadership. If you work in a PM business where the principal doesn't really care about what you do and you're left isolated on your own, dealing with problems, you don't feel like picking the phone up, right? And if you've already got, because you can end up in a culture where your owners have a sort of a fairly fragile relationship with the agency, right? Not a deep one. Well, if I'm a PM working in that business, the last thing I want to do is pick a phone up and be the bearer of bad news. So I do what you perpetually do, which is emails. You kind of keep your head down. You try and avoid the conflict because you're stressed already, trying to get maintenance done. It's you can't just break the cycle and go, I'm going to start picking the phone up, because you just get hammered.
Yeah. The amount of issues that you see, and there's probably some directors and selling principals that are on there listening to this podcast, and there would be a flare up with a landlord, and they would ask the property manager, like, send me the correspondence so I can have a look at what's happened. And it's pages and pages of correspondence, and you look at it and you think, why didn't you pick up the phone when that first email came in and just like fleshed it out? And I think the reason for that is the hiding behind the email and the not wanting the conflict, all of that kind of stuff. But in regards to, and at the core of it is that they don't have a relationship with that landlord.
Yeah. And
my whole thing, and I bring it back to the Housemark KPIs around picking up the phone first and speaking to the landlord once a month. That's if there's no letting, right? If there's no letting, you're speaking to your landlord 12 times a year. It's a very different conversation if you're speaking to your landlord every 4 weeks when there is an issue, because you've built that relationship and trust over time. So picking up the phone, it's not like, what's wrong now? It's more like, hi, Alex, like what's happening? And it's, how can we solve this together, as opposed to what's this going to cost me? And I think that's the future is more consultative, it's more detailed, and it's more relationship based. And the back and forth pages and pages of email to sort out an oven that's not working, and the landlord's upset, the tenant's upset, and you're not hearing back from the tradies. I think that those days are gone, because people will just move now to everyone wants instantaneous correspondence. It's a live world where we can get things straight away. So if something comes in, why shouldn't we just pick up the phone straight away and have that connection with the landlord, sort the issue out, and move on?
We're going to take a quick break here, Nick. We'll pick this up when we come back. Welcome back. Great to have you with us. With my friend Nick Georges here. We're getting stuck into the conversation. I have to remember to put a break in at times because we get into our flow. I'm going to give you another little scenario. So my son has a property in Perth. He lives in the UK. He sent me a note the other day saying, "Oh, look, I wonder if you can help me with this. There's an issue with the property. There's some, there's mold, and I don't really know what to do." He's aware enough, even as a young bloke, that mold is not good in the house. So look at the email. There's he's in the UK, so email's all right. But I look at the email trail that the PM has sent to him, and the PM's basically saying, "We'll paint over the mold," and then, when you go into summer, it kind of disappears. And I'm looking at that as an owner and going, there's mold for a reason. Mold you don't just paint over mold, And I've gone back to my son. I've said, you got to work out what's causing the mold. There's a structural issue in the property, and you've got a $800,000, $900,000 asset that needs to be maintained, right? For you as a landlord, there's two things. You've got to make sure you got safe accommodation for your tenants. It's a duty of care as for any landlord. Secondly, you've got an asset that if there's water getting in, there's probably structural damage taking place. So painting over mold isn't going to sort it out, right? And so I ended up, and I won't go through all the, so I said, you probably want a different property manager, because this person, I read the trail of the email, they're going, no, we don't really do this type of thing. And I'm going, well, what do you do then? Like, do you collect rent? What do you do? You're the custodian of, in my opinion, two fundamental things. You're the custodian of an owner relationship, and you're the custodian of a property that someone lives in. And if you're not looking after those two things in sync, you're not doing your job properly. We didn't move agencies in the end because finally, when we put pressure on the property manager, then she came along, because with the threat of changing agencies, she went, oh, we'll go and get someone to inspect the roof, and we'll go and identify where the leaks are, and then we'll go and get quotes. And I go, well, why couldn't you give that in the first place? Why have I had to spend hours and hours and hours getting involved? So, I think we talk about picking up the phone and having a proactive relationship, but the future of property management for me is, and I look at, Housemarque is a great example of a next-gen agency, is there's this gap with owners of having a partner. It's not about doing property management or rent collection or maintenance or any of the other bits and pieces. They're individual components of something more important, which is being a partner in their investment. Now, whether it's their own home and they're working overseas and it's being rented out in the short term, whether they've tried to sell it and they decided they're going to rent it till the market improves, or whether they are a clear-cut investor, whether it's in an SMSF or, in a trust structure, or maybe it's a block of apartments, maybe it's just one unit. It doesn't really matter. There is a very big gap for owners around this partnership. And the PMs that have a next-gen mindset, like Nat, and the gang at Housemarque, like, Alistair Shearer, who I catch up with regularly, who's now with Bell, like Grant McKay from New Management, and like endless other forward-thinking PMs, directors. They understand what they represent to their customer. They know who their customer is, and they know what they represent. And they grow their businesses because, guess what? If you build a relationship of trust with your customer, your owner, talking about maintenance then is not this awful caustic moment where I've got to go, Nick, it's going to cost you $800. Because if I'm a partner in wealth, in building wealth through property, through property ownership, the costs and expenses around maintenance become, look, of course I don't want to part with $800, but you know what? When I don't ever hear from my PM and suddenly I go, Alex, you've got to spend this and Alex, you've got to spend that, that becomes quite an abrasive relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes deeper than, I know we always look at the landlord as our client in property management, but I actually spent some time over the weekend with a bunch of officers at a study tour, and one of your clients, Ash Merlo from the Property Collab.
Yep.
And we were talking about, everyone looks at the landlord experience, which is very,
so
very.
She's one of my. She's on managed, but I'm also a customer of Ash. I've got property with Ash,
right?
So I've got a place up in the Northern Beaches.
She was talking about, yes, the landlord experience, but what's the tenant experience like? So in regards to when a tenant moves in, someone from her team or her will actually meet the tenant on site and do a walkthrough with the tenant. And what that does, it actually sets the tenant up for success, and you start the relationship up strong, and there aren't those flare-ups that happen with narky tenants when they come in. So it's actually looking at it holistically, and I thought that was a really interesting take on it. Obviously, in the Northern Beaches of Sydney, there's a lot of tenants that become landlords, and they're the next wave of investors in your business.
But you've also, I think this is really important, and I like where you're going with this. And here's the thing, right? You've got, because of political changes, you've turned investors into pariahs to be hated, right? That's what has happened politically. Evil property owners, denying young people their ability to own their own home. So if you don't look after your tenants, if you have a landlord, okay, you may be a PM, but if you have a landlord and you have a disconnected relationship with your tenants, there is a chance that some of those people are going to have a disrespectful relationship with that property, right? Why would you not, with Ash, with the Property Collab, leaning into that? Then you're giving, you're providing good service to both sides of the equation, both the owner and the tenant. But there's a common sense approach, apart from the sort of human element. You're going to treat the property with more respect, right?
Absolutely. I think we need to start looking at this, and it starts with leadership. And I call them silos. So there's the sales silo, there might be the tenant silo, the landlord silo. Is like, when are we going to start looking at our businesses holistically and drawing that line in the sand about what is our expectation as a business to our customer, whoever that is, whether that's a buyer, a tenant, a landlord. Like, there needs to be a level of service.
And I think something else I want to pick up on, Nick, sorry to interrupt in your flow, but something that you sort of gone into earlier, which I think is worth going into. You got maintenance, but you need trades to do maintenance, and it's hard. You know, if you're an agency that hasn't built up a really good network of trusted trades, and it's really hard to get tradespeople to do jobs these days, right? So that creates friction, because you've got the maintenance that needs to be done, but somebody needs to do it, and it needs to be done at a competitive price, and it needs to be done well.
Yeah, and that's once again, the tradie is our customer and client as well. Like, what's their experience like when they receive a work order, when they pick up the keys? These tradies are going into investment properties, conducting work, meeting our tenants, talking to our landlords direct at times. Like, do you have a strategy around trades? And then the other part to that around trades is sometimes we get trades that get complacent because they've been doing work at an office for a certain level of time. But have you just let that relationship go? Do they feel a valued part of your ecosystem? There's a lot of layers to running a successful property management business or business in general. And I think the key is to firstly identify who are your stakeholders, who are your customers and clients, and how do you want them to feel in every part of the process?
So I'm going to throw you a question here, Nick, just because we're getting close to rounding off. And I know this isn't something you're going to do, but if you were to decide that you're going to go back into property management, you're going to start from scratch, give me just a quick checklist of the mindset and the key things that you would think about to set up an agency from scratch that's geared for success.
It's a very, very good question. I would employ, the first person that I would employ would be someone with a growth-focused mindset. You'd almost hire a full-blown BDM to start. You might have some challenges with some of the administration stuff, but picking a good platform to sweep all that up, I think will eliminate a lot of the issues. Someone who is phenomenal at building relationships.
So you go for the BDM and with yourself, and you go, let's do the business side of things, the relationship side, and we'll work out the admin and the other stuff.
We always talk about and it's not a dissimilar journey to what we had in Wingman. It's we had the mindset of growth fixes all problems, but you've also got to deliver on the customer experience after a certain point. But it does make it easier when you do have a foundational bit of growth. And like the relationship piece is the big one. Someone who's focused on relationship. And then the second part is process, having a process, whatever that is, holistically across your business. What is the process when a repair comes in, and what are the steps behind that? So they're the foundational pieces, and then I would get someone with a growth mindset to actually kick it off.
I'll tell you something which we've in our business. This is sort of, well, it's both within managed. We've radically reshaped managed, but looking upstairs into the broader Momentum Media and Momentum Markets business, myself and Phil, my business partner, we've got a philosophy built around strategic under-resourcing. Right now, that sounds a bit harsh, but what it basically, rather than having too many people and not enough work, you end up with complacency, with poor habits, with a lack of energy. We strategically now look to run lean, right? We want people covering more ground. We're building the systems and the infrastructure to make sure they can work efficiently. And I've never worked in real estate, but I feel fundamentally, and you know, looking at sort of, you know, your key points around having a BDM and a growth focused person first, you can run strategically lean as long as you're growing, because you're gaining ground, and you might be working hard, and you might be feeling, you know, that you're sort of getting tired and fatigued. But if you can see the progress and the growth, and if you bring new people into a business, that has got that cadence of hard work and productivity, you're going to continue to grow. If you bring people into a business that is lazy and inefficient, people very quickly settle down to that particular heartbeat.
Creating a DNA in your business of growth is an exciting place to be,
isn't it?
It attracts people. It creates excitement. It creates an environment for people to thrive. And do you get it right every time in terms of the recruitment? No. But if you've got an underlying philosophy around growth, you will eventually attract the right people. And I mean, that's the fun of business, right? Being able to scale a business, growth, and bring people on that journey.
But you get a growth mindset. And I think most things I've learned, unless you're talking about rocket science or brain surgery, you can kind of learn process, right? You know?
Yeah.
But if you put that first, it's not a very exciting proposition. If you're part of a business, whatever it is that you do, which is ambitious, it's growing, it's got energy, it knows where it's going, and people are excited about working in that business, led from the front and led from the top, then you will attract, you don't want to have people in that business that want to tread water.
Yeah.
So I think, and you've got to be really, and again, from my experience in other areas, like I'm really selective in terms of who I have working in my business. They need to have the energy, the drive, the robustness. And I think a lot of PMs are very robust because they've got a tough job, but you've got to have that, you know, that drive and want to see things grow. There are some people that don't want things to grow because they go, it's going to mean more work for me. And you don't want to build a business if you want to be a growth agency with people that want to keep things just the way they are.
And I think there's an element of like, as you grow and as you get bigger and you build a team, quite often you feel like you can step back from the day-to-day pitching and growth-related activities. And like I just look at myself personally and Johnny, my business partner, and even Jono, our CEO, is like we still love to get in there and pitch and speak to Bill and Sandy who've just started their office and want some support, or to speak to a big corporation with 12,000 managements. Like that's the fun part of if deep down, and this is a philosophy that we've got in our business, is like we want to help businesses scale, grow, and be more efficient. Whatever that looks like, that doesn't necessarily need to be around offshoring. That can just be a conversation, and they've taken something from that conversation and implemented it. Like it's a deep rooted value proposition that we've built in our business, and that's come from our values. That's come from a lot of time in the industry. That's come from the feeling that you get from a business owner who rings you and say, "Oh, we've just implemented this and it's amazing." Or
let's talk about offshore just for a brief moment. So there's a number of things I want to say. I talked to somebody a trainer in the mortgage broking field that I spend a lot of time in, and I asked him a question 6 months ago. I said, how many? What sort of percentage of brokers do you think use, offshoring? And he went, probably about 20% of them. And I was just blown away. So we managed a significant proportion of our team are based in the Philippines. We're not just talking about people that help with onboarding our customers. They're at the front line. We're working with our customers, designers, engineers, our UX and our UI people. They're all, we've got a significant team there as well as here. So they are part of our team. I look at Momentum. We've got significant resources working offshore. And it blows my mind to think that any business anywhere doesn't have a team that is based offshore. And it gives, I think, I'm sure you'd be far better positioned to talk about the ratios and give guidance, but it is the talent of the people that are available, the level of education, the level of experience now, because you've got centres that have offshored for so long now that you've got people who actually understand what they're doing. We're not getting people who are learning how to do a particular process, whether it's mortgage broking or real estate or creating software. You've got a resource of people that have been doing this for various organisations, significant and also small, for many years.
Yeah, I think the whole perception of offshoring is has evolved.
Yeah.
And the way that offshoring is done has also evolved. And I would like to think that our organisation has played a part in that in the real estate sector over the past 3 or 4 years. And I think the reason for that is we've taken a very different lens on offshoring. I would say that the majority of people who are offshore have employed someone in the Philippines and have just flicked tasks to them very ad lib, and the quality hasn't been great, and it's been a resource that's probably used to 30% of its capacity.
Yeah.
Where we've taken a lens of is let's actually understand the current reality of your business, right? What's your tech stack? What's your process? How many team members do you have? Total number of managements? Where do you want to get to? And there is a holistic look at the business. And then once we've worked out what the plan is and how we're going to get there, it's the build out of the actual identifying who is doing what. So let's just say a rent increase, as an example, there might be 16 steps in a rent increase. Who is doing what?
Yeah.
Is your tech automating some of it, and who's driving that process? And that's the level of depth that we go into when onboarding a remote professional. The other part that I think where we've taken a very different approach is we've put just as big an emphasis on our onshore resourcing as we have on our onshore resourcing. So you will have a specialist, so whether it's property management or sales or marketing or accounts, a specialist on the ground here guiding you through that onboarding who all have come from the sector. So our property management integration team all have been property managers and understand not only the tech, but the intricate details of the actual process. So it is very much a very holistic partnership, but it's also really bring to the forefront is what are your onshore team doing?
Well, this goes back to what you're saying from the outset in terms of building a next-gen agency is if you start to think differently about property management and the roles, don't think about the doing, right, first and foremost, and going, oh, I've hired this person here, in this suburb, and they've got to do all the things. Think about the customer, and we've just touched on it, and the customer being the owner, the tenant, you have a relationship with the tradespeople. Look at relationships and how you get the most out of relationships and you add value to relationships, and then look at how you can be smart with using your tech stack, but also using all the resources available on and offshore to get process done.
I think to sort of round it out, like if you've got good process, if you've got good tech, and your onshore resource, your property manager, is doing what they should be doing, the relationship-based activity, that's going to free them up for you as the owner of the business to continue to upskill them and add value, whatever that looks like, whether that be more training.
Well, this goes back into what you were saying earlier, because if you're caught in the crashing waves of doing everything, you don't want to get trained. You're too busy doing.
Exactly. And then the other part that ties it all together is if your business is not growing, how do you expect your people to grow? And if we always say this in our business is if our business doubles in size, your roles will all look very, very different when that happens. If we stay as we are, nothing changes, guys.
Change.
So having that growth mindset it really does, it changes the whole ethos of the business and it allows people to strive for something. And that's why it's so important to work out like where do they want to be in their career, and even more so in property management, because the old notion of a property management professional staying in PM for a couple of years as a stepping stone into sales, it's just not going to cut it anymore.
And it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
Because I think, the opportunity is to create. So I say the opportunity to create. I look at businesses where PM, I know a number of agencies where they just do PM. I know agencies where they've got PM and sales. They're on a level footing, and I think you disadvantage any agency by, as soon as you change the balance to sales being more elevated, hey, I might want to be a sales agent, in which case Go be a sales agent. Don't spend a year, treading water doing a job you don't want to do in PM. But I think the leadership, the principle, having a level playing field where you're gonna grow a business on this side, or you can make sales on this side.
I think there's a part there, like this is my own philosophy, but I think there is a pathway from property management into sales, and that is like learn your trade in the BDM space, sign 200 managements, and then you can move into sales.
If that's what you want to do. Like
if sales is where you want to go to, there is no better training or academy than in the BDM space, because you're winning because you're doing the same activities as a sales agent. The business owner is winning because it's growing their rent roll.
But then I look at Housemarque. Housemarque's got a guy, I think Jordan, is it Jordan Slinger?
Slinger, yeah.
Like he's bringing on 40 odd managements, a month organic. Like the guy's dynamite, and I reckon he's making good dough doing that in BDM, in PM.
Yeah, but that brings it back to when he first started. Like he was an amazing BDM when he first started. He was, I think he was doing about 20 a month when he started, but his whole goal and vision was to become an owner in the business.
Yeah, okay.
So there was a pathway.
So he doesn't want to be a sales agent.
No.
So this is what you can be totally sales focused and operate very successfully, probably more successfully in PM than you can in sales. And it goes back to what I was saying when we start out, right? Sales agents, it's a very competitive space. Hey, be an absolute gun as a BDM in PM. You'll cut a swathe through all the mediocrity out there because there's a ton of it.
There's a ton of it. And it brings it back to understanding what your people want. Like if you understand individually what your people want and map out what a path looks like for them to get there, you'll attract good people, you'll keep good people, and you'll grow a successful business.
We're going to round off that. I think that's a beautiful finish to this podcast. We've talked for a long time, Nick. This is how it is. We should have been having a glass of wine and a steak while we're at it. But Nick, I'm really grateful for you coming in. You're a busy man, and it's always good to catch up. So thank you for that.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime.
For everyone else, thanks so much for tuning in. Love having you with us. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Don't forget, check in with us next week.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property, or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.